helped homeschooling explode here in Canada, especially in Ontario, where I am based. So homeschooling has definitely been on the rise since the start of the pandemic.
You're homeschooling.
Yeah, we've been out of the school system since the start of the pandemic, since the closure, and then we didn't go back at the reopening in September. We opted out.
What? Tell me why.
Well, we didn't feel comfortable with some of the decisions that were being made by, medical officers and things. We didn't feel that some of the things that would be happening in the schools was thought out or strategic. We were disappointed as a family, as a community, really, with the strategic return plan. There was a lot of changes. There was not a lot of consistency. As parents, we didn't trust, the decision making that was happening at the time. There were a lot of big decisions to have to make to send our children in that we weren't comfortable, making certain compromises, I should say, for some of the things that would be going on in the schools.
What did you started, bringing the kids back into the home environment for education.
Yeah.
What did you find?
I found that the children loved it. I found that the teachers loved it. I found that the students, my kids and all kids that are learning in this way, were advancing a lot quicker through material than we were expecting. I noticed through the online learning that the content, my kids were struggling with it. They weren't really learning much. And so we found when we changed modalities that they were way more engaged. They were advancing more quickly, and everyone was much happier this way. Our teachers loved it because they got a lot more creative freedom and a lot more control in their classroom that they don't really get in the public school system. So they really love that as well. So it's really a win-win for parents, students, and teachers. So everybody's been loving the change in model.
You went from being someone yourself who said, okay, I'm just going to do this for me, but then you founded something, the Learning Pod. Can you sort of explain what that is?
Yeah, so Learning Pods is a sort of modern day twist on homeschooling. So traditional homeschooling is a parent and a student together learning one-on-one, and maybe they get together with other homeschoolers for some social interaction. Because of the pandemic, parents were sort of put in a rock and a hard place, and Learning Pods basically is the solution that we found. So it's a twist on homeschooling where you are learning in a home, oftentimes the teacher's home or the parent's home. Several children come together to do the learning, so it's not one-on-one, and then it creates a sort of little micro classroom in a home setting. The great thing about it as well, if I may, is that parents and teachers can sort of set their own schedules. They can decide when and how children are learning. They can do outdoor, indoor, so there's a lot more flexibility and versatility with what parents and teachers can offer to their students at this time through pods.
And I remember the thing I wanted to ask you. The work from home for adults, is that also a part of the formula that's making learn from home for kids more appealing, that parents are increasingly in the house and it's not so, you obviously can't teach your kids from the office, but if you want to say be the parent who's teaching or have a teacher come in, it's easier?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think pre-pandemic parents would have been very intimidated by the notion of homeschooling and working from home and juggling homeschooling, but because we were all sort of thrust into it without choice, we all got to experience it, right? We had no choice but to live it. And so many parents realized it wasn't that bad. Working from home and seeing your kids more often and being more hands-on in the education was actually a very positive experience for parents and children. So pre-pandemic, I don't think many parents would have jumped into this willingly, but because we got a taste of it, we see that it's actually quite beneficial. And well, with the latter options, I mean, it's basically the only choice for many of us. So it ends up working out quite well.
One of the other things that I've kind of heard from parents is not necessarily the actual academic aspects of it, but they were hearing from their teachers in the school system. Your child has a little bit of trouble, perhaps like attention or being rambunctious, and they go, okay, yeah, that's good, I understand. And then the kids have come into the home environment and they see it. They actually get a chance to see, like, oh my goodness, is this what Timmy's been struggling with? And they go, yeah, this is it. Do you find that parents actually getting to come face to face with some of their kids' challenges is also helpful for overcoming them?
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely gives you a different perspective on your child to view them in the classroom setting, which we weren't accustomed to in past. So there's definitely, it's enlightening for many, absolutely. But the other really great thing about small class sizes, and this was a political talking point in this province for long before COVID, is class sizes. And what do large class sizes really do for children and their learning? And so many parents have been dissatisfied with this long before COVID. So what pods do is they really reduce class sizes. They really give teachers an opportunity to focus one-on-one with students, and so it's a lot harder to get lost in the cracks that way. And so it's actually really beneficial for children with special needs, for learning disabilities, and even gifted children to be able to learn on their course. And that's something that schools aren't able to offer children today. When you have one teacher and 30 kids in a class, especially today with all the measures and sort of janitorial duties thrust upon teachers with the measures, it's impossible to do a great job teaching. It was tough before, and now it's beyond tough. So I sympathize with the teachers, but I also recognize that there's a lot of solution in reducing class sizes, and so this has actually given a lot of power back to children and empowered them in their education where they once felt disempowered. So it's again a really great bonus of this model.
Kind of jumping back to your own experience, when you decided, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to make the decision, and we're going to jump in, and we're going to give homeschooling a try. Were you excited? Were you apprehensive, nervous? Like, what did you feel?
I was apprehensive as anything. We have 4 kids and a business, and so it was a huge decision to take it on. So I was definitely apprehensive, but also firm in my knowing of what I needed to do for my family. So it was tough. There were a lot of long conversations between my husband and I, a lot of accounting that needed to be done about our lives and our energy and our space and all the different elements that go into it. But we made the right decision, so we have no regrets. And yeah.
What are the, we were touched on some of the pros, what are the cons? You've had a chance to jump into an experience firsthand, nothing's perfect. What are the things that if someone is thinking about it, they might want to be aware of?
Sure. Well, I think that parents have become accustomed to a sort of education system where we're very hands-off. We drop our kids off at school. We have no say over who they're with, their teachers, the content, none of it. So the difference here is there is a little bit more thought and legwork involved from a parent's perspective to take on this model. It's not drop and go, right? It's not what we're used to. It's hands-on, and there is some legwork. There is some due diligence required on behalf of a parent to put this model together. Homeschooling's not new. There's a plethora of amazing curriculums and content available as well from our own government around how to educate your child. So it's the content is there. It's just about finding it, and that's another reason we created Learning Pods, was to try to bring all that together in one centralized space for parents who are trying to do this and take that weight off and that worry about all the different pieces that need to come together. So it's definitely some more legwork and some time investment needed. It is also not free all the time, so there is potentially that money factor. So.
When you say not free all the time, are those the situations where it's actually not the parent who's doing the teaching, but you say you're grouping in with your community, you're hiring a teacher? Is that when it starts to cost?
Correct. Oftentimes parents will opt to split the price of a teacher and hire them to come in and work with the kids, and they will split that cost amongst themselves, and so that would be a fee. This is all negotiated between the parents and the teachers, and teachers can set their own rates. So in that case, there would be a fee for service. A lot of parents also do a parent-led pod, so the parents themselves will share the teaching responsibilities and sort of each take a course or each take a day. And again, this is negotiated amongst the parents, and that model is often free.
Okay. And there was one more thing that I know I wanted to ask. It's going to drift back in my head any second, but in the meantime, is there anything that you want to add, something that I maybe wouldn't know to ask you about that you think is relevant that we should be aware of?
Well, times are changing. And everything's been evolving through the pandemic, and education needs to evolve too. I've tried to speak to the Ministry of Education many times about some of the solutions we as parents would like to put forward, and I would still love to have that conversation if they were ever so inclined. But that's about it. Yeah.
And just again, jumping back to you, how long have you been homeschooling now? A year and a half?
Yeah, it's been about that since March of last year, I guess.
Okay. Just anything that really jumped out from it? Any personal stories, experiences, thoughts that you're like, this is worth mentioning?
It's just been really fun getting to know so many Canadians that are passionate about their children's education, that are passionate to see change, and that are willing to roll up their sleeves and make that happen. And I'm really grateful to be a part of something so special for our children's future.
I thought of the last thing I wanted to ask you. When it comes to, you sort of talked about it exploded. It's been this huge interest since the pandemic, particularly. I don't know if you actually have like data you've collected, or even on your head, it's like, oh, it feels like about double, it feels like about triple. Can you give us an idea of just how strong that interest has become?
Well, I think that the interest wanes and waves with announcements and things that are actually happening in the political realm. So when a new announcement is made or a new measure is instated, I think parents reach a boiling point. And so every time something like that happens, we see a growth spurt. So the summer's been steadily increasing as well, and I believe as announcements come forth for September, and I expect not much to change in the positive, there will be even more interest garnering this model. So like I said, I notice it's very much in patterns with what's happening in the political realm. That's sort of what's influencing parents' decisions around what they're going to do with their children. So I would notice all the upticks come around announcements. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to do a couple of words as well?
No.
No.
That's
No.
my very supportive.